I'd say 30 years to pretty much the present. The arcades have been relegated to the back rooms and the side streets and generally been an unsavory type of place. What we want to do is bring the amusement game to age. If we can give it a new zip and a pizzazz, it's going to be financially successful as well as, I think, a very serious part in the leisure time activity of the American people.
The marriage of traditional pinball machines and computer technology has resulted in the birth of a new breed of amusement games. And Nolan Bushnell is the man handing out the cigars. Bushnell has developed two such games, Computer Space and Pong, and believes that they and others like them will move the pinball industry out of America's bus stations and bowling alleys and into the space age. In 1971, Bushnell invented Computer Space, but sold production rights to Nutting Associates of Mountain View, California, for royalties based on the number of games sold. It proved a good deal for both parties. Sales already exceed 1,500 machines. Computer Space, like Pong, sells for around $1,000 and is played on the screen of a standard television set, which has been programmed to display the desired game. In Computer Space, the player controls a rocket ship, which is trying to shoot down enemy flying saucers while avoiding their missiles. If the player scores more hits than the enemy saucers, he gets one free play. By the time Bushnell invented Pong in 1972, he was able to form his own company, Syzygy Corporation in Santa Clara, California, to produce the game. He has already sold over 1,000 machines and expects to sell 10,000 in the United States by the end of the year. Pong, as the name might indicate, is a game of video ping pong. The two players turn dials which control their electronic paddles and volley with an equally electronic ball. The first player to score 15 points wins. While Bushnell did design and program both his games, the technology he uses dates back to the late 1950s. Thanks to research by the Defense Department in the wake of Sputnik, Bushnell is now able to act out his dream of a nation inhabited by thousands of Pong and Computer Space games.
The government spent millions of dollars on this technology, and as a result, now it's cheap enough that we can put it into a game and sell it for 25 cents for a few minutes and make $1 out of it. It's something that the research and development really was done many years ago, and now it's cheap enough that with PC boards and integrated circuits, we can use that technology to our advantage.
The basic electronic unit of Bushnell's games is the integrated circuit. Each of these small chips is capable of storing large amounts of information. The program for a game is determined by specific combinations of these units to form a PC, or printed circuit board. The printed circuit board then tells the TV screen what to do. A single printed circuit board is all that is required to operate Pong, whereas 15 years ago it would have taken enough tubes and wiring to fill an average house. Bushnell first saw the commercial potential of video games in a game called Space War, which has been played at computer centers around the country for several years.
We used to play Space War a lot at the AI project at Stanford, which is a big computer complex. And one day it just hit, this is a lot of fun. You ought to be able to package it and sell it for a price. And, one thing leads to another, and pretty soon, from doodling on a scratch pad, you're actually working out some basic block diagrams, and from there you think, boy, it's going to work.
So everybody's heard the Pong story. Probably everybody's heard the Pong story, but I've heard it many times, and from Al Alcorn himself, who designed Pong. So,
the story I've heard is that they installed one of the first Pong machines in a tavern and let people play it as a test.
Put it out into an arcade and see if it makes money. I mean, that's the market research.
My understanding was Ted built a cabinet, a tabletop, simple cabinet over the weekend. And a coin mech bolted to the side of the cabinet, tabletop type of big thing was sit on a barrel.
Placing a interactive video machine somewhere and having people play it was still a relatively new concept. Nobody knew if it was going to go.
Oh, what is the name of the bar in Palo Alto?
San Jose?
No, it was Andy Capp's.
It was Santa Clara?
Sunnyvale.
So we'll put it in Andy Capp's. You know, it's a coin-op game, be it fragile and humble. And so we did.
Well, my memory is that he gets a phone call, the game's busted, which of course is the usual thing you get on a support line. It doesn't work. What is it, and in what way does it not work? Well, it doesn't work.
The bar owner or manager at the time kind of yelled at them and like accused them of their game being shoddy because it had already broken down and it was no longer functioning or working.
And they get a call, you know, later on that night and like, hey, this thing broke, you know. come and pick up this piece of shit game and get it out of here. You know, this thing broke. You know, I'm not going to waste my time fixing this crap.
But anyway, the machine, we got the word that it stopped working, and I figured it could be anything, and I'd go out there and take a look at it. And so I went to the machine, and the first thing you do is you want to try to play the game, because the machine was on in a tracked mode, so it was working, but you couldn't start a game. So you open up the coin box to basically flip the micro switch to give yourself a free game, because I'm not going to waste a quarter, you know.
And so they went down to see what's wrong with the machine to fix it, and what they found out was that it wasn't broken. It was just that so many people had played it, they'd filled the coin box with quarters, and it was jammed, and it couldn't take any more.
So many people had played it that it couldn't accept any more money.
The game is broken because it's stuffed so full of quarters.
Completely stuffed with quarters.
And it was a small, I remember it was kind of small, if I remember. It was a small space. It just filled up with the quarters, and it wouldn't take it.
When I opened up the coin mech, you know, all these quarters just gushed out. So, whoa, that's impressive.
It's the equivalent of like crashing a server. When you launch a new website and it's so popular. So they crashed the server on Pong.
And one of the other reasons it was also so popular is because you could play it with one hand while you're still holding a pint in your other hand. And that also was one of those things that, you know, eventually many, many years later led to the rise of the fun barcades that we have, you know, and we can enjoy now.
as Al will always say with a little, twinkle in his eye, he goes, "This is a problem I can fix."
Basically, the way it worked was you take the money, the deal you have, and you split the take with the owner of the bar. And so I did that, and I had this sack of quarters, and the next day I come into work, and I said, "I got the machine fixed, and here's the problem. Goddamn thing's making too much money." And they'll went, "Really?"
But it was one of those great moments where something that supposedly was failing was actually such a huge success that no one could recognize. It was truly the ugly duckling version of technology.
Because remember, Nolan thought, he was like, this is just a placeholder until we get to design the really good game, because who's going to play this stupid shit-ass game?
They went on to produce all of these classic, memorable arcade titles for years that allowed the company to survive and be so much more than a one-hit wonder. So that's my understanding of the history of Pong.
It's a great story, if it's true.
When a story is good, you know there's some doubt about it. Like, oh, that's too good to be really true. It's probably a boring version of it that's actually true.
It sounds realistic to me. I mean, I've kind of seen that happen in my own. And when you do get a really great game, the coins will just overflow, and it's kind of a cool feeling.
Anyway, that's how that all happened. Yeah. Anyway.
Get ready.
Shot. Range. Health. Range. Laser. Shot. Laser. Speed. Speed. Bounce. Range. Range. Speed. Health. Bounce. Bounce. Laser. Range. Range shot. Range shot. Speed. Range. Bounce. Bounce. Speed. Laser. Range. Shot. Shot. Laser. Speed. Rocket. Range. Health. Shot. Bounce. Speed. Health. Range. Speed. Rocket. Speed. 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 Shot. Bounce. Rocket. Laser. Shot. Range. Speed. Rocket. Speed. Laser. Range. Range. Speed. Speed. Shot. Range. Shot. Speed. Rocket. Bounce. Range. Rocket. Bounce. Speed. Laser. Rocket. Bounce. Range. Shot. Laser. Range. Shot. Shot. Speed. Shot.
I mean, Atari really, why were they in the pinball business? You know, here they had this tiger by the tail of video games, you know, just this supernova of creativity and possibilities. And, you know, they were nailing it left and right, creating new genres every other week. Why would you mess around with pinball? You could tell our games were just not working, you know, and due to reliability, poor engineering, you know, thermal issues, issues of the games just falling apart, poor hardware design. You know, I could see the writing was on the wall that we were going to go down. I mean, the pinball division was just a massive disaster. I mean, it was, you know, it's kind of the, you know, kind of the hubris of, you know, I guess Silicon Valley, even in that era, you know, was like, oh, these morons in Chicago, they make these crappy old games, you know, like, you know, we're going to redesign everything. We're going to put the display down in the bottom. We're going to, you know, put the boards underneath the play field, so all the crap falls in and shorts out the things. And I mean, it was really horrific design, and they caught on fire. And the solenoids, they used this thing called rotary solenoids, which burned up, and the screws fell out. And, it was kind of a just a complete disaster as far as like design and also testing. And so there was a lot of games that caught on fire in the early days. So, but they made a lot of money when they were working. We did. The programming was awesome because I did it.
You will hear stories of hot tubs in the lobby and drug use in the office, and I'm here to tell you that none of that happened in my department.
We started smoking pot right in our office. Rob and I were like the premier pot. Sorry, Rob. I and some other person who occasionally shared an office with me for 5 years at Atari, however that frickin' worked, we would just fire up right in the office. It's like, who knows why? It's like, this is like, it's illegal. It's like, it wasn't even a sense of privilege. It was just mindlessness.
I worked in a satellite office. I started in 1977, which was still pretty early. It was only 18 months since the 2600 came out. But there was no hot tub in the lobby of the office that I went to. There was no drug use in Atari, though I don't doubt that it was over where Howard and Todd Fry were working.
Drugs were consumed at Atari by all kinds of people at all levels of management, from the bottom to the top and all over engineering. Not everybody did drugs, but some people did, and some people enjoyed them, and some people abused them, and some people went to the hospital on them. And but by and large, drugs were a relatively nominal factor. Drugs, you know, there was a lot of marijuana, and it participated a lot in brainstormings. So we had the way of, you know, trying to incorporate drugs into our productivity model.
I went home and I smoked a joint, a little bit of cocaine and a little bit of psilocybin in it. And I was sitting there, it was about half gone when I realized, oh, you could do that. And it's like I put it out and I went and I wrote a page of notes. And my design for that kernel was exactly what it ended up shipping. It was like, it was a tremendous amount of effort, actually, to get everything organized.
You know, they did have good deliveries of cannabis in the inter-office mail. You know, that was probably the primary use of those yellow manila envelopes. I think it was, you know, Fridays or Monday. I think it was Fridays when you get these really thick envelopes coming through the system. And, you know, and it was weird. It was like there was a guy working there, and his job was he was the weed dealer. You know, that was his sole job at the whole company.
And there was a very straight German VP of hardware down the hallway in the building. I have no idea. He complained to management about the smell of pot smoke in the corridors. So they got him an office in a different building.
I have been asthmatic since I've been 12. I need drugs to breathe. I did not do drugs because drugs to me were something that let you get up in the morning, you know, and breathe. So and nor did I think I wanted to mix those things. The high of me was doing the work, and I was always a happy guy. So I just didn't feel I needed it. So I never did drugs, but there were a lot there.
Don't put too much stock in the fact that every Atari employee was stoned out of their minds while making games.
I mean, there was all kinds of drugs consumed at Atari, but the real drug at Atari was going into a store and seeing your product, seeing your game on a shelf.
when was this? 1980, 81, that time frame. Prior to Ray Kassar's emergence, I was part of the executive staff, you know, and Nolan, Joe, I, Steve Bristow, Gil, Dennis Groth, finance, you know, we were all friends and no politics and all that, and we all worked together and part of the team. It was great. Once Ray took over, nope, it was all a closed office, and he met with all his hires from Procter & Gamble, and so I realized, okay, I'm out of this. I'm either going to have to quit because Nolan had gone, Joe had gone, Lipkin, everybody had gone. I figured, well, I'll go back. This is my baby. I'm going to do it one more time. And we had used holography. We couldn't keep secrets at Atari. We were just no good at it. So we decided the best thing to do was put out disinformation. So one of the best ones was the next coin-op game is going to have holography in it. It was like, what the hell is that? I knew what it was, because having, you know, been to college and studied this physics and stuff. But that was just, but anyway, I decided, well, let's do something in holography. Maybe there's something there. I'll take it. Sounds hard, sounds interesting. I know a little bit about it. And we proceeded to explore holography and what could be done, and came up with a holographic toy that basically sold it to Ray, saying, how would you like, because the cartridge video game business seemed to be very good. How would you like to have a system where the cartridge, it's a cartridge-based system, but the cartridges are half the cost of, everything is half the cost of the VCS. And, hey, go ahead. It were very simple. They were nothing more than an LED, a simple LED game, the handheld LED game in those days. The only difference was we had a hologram with 2 images on it. You look through this box, and there were 2 lamps inside, and when you'd crash a spaceship, you'd see a hologram of a spaceship crashing. And but you could look through this half metallized mylar and play a Space Invader game or something like that. We did all the work, put everything together, got a chip designed, package designed, and at the end, Ray wouldn't. We even took it to the toy fair or the consumer. And marketing wouldn't show it, wouldn't back it up. And we did it ourselves, engineering, and we think we sold 100,000 of them, but Ray would not release it, just wouldn't do it. And I realized that was it. They're not going to release that. I mean, this is now in a time when if it failed, you wouldn't even notice it. It wouldn't be a pimple on the balance sheet, but they were afraid to do it. Back when the whole company was, we're sure we'd do it. So that was the end of my career at Atari.
On the simplest level, what the VCS, the Atari 2600, what that is, it's a combination of plastic and computer chips that enables you to play a video game, an interactive video game on your home television, which is something that never really happened before.
If you're making an arcade game, it begins as a hardware project. If you need something more in the hardware, just put it in the hardware and you can use it in your game. The Atari 2600, we didn't have that luxury. The game was already in Grandma's house. It was already hooked up to her TV. And all we could do is make a different cartridge, sell that to the person, he plugs it in.
It was the thing that made video games a worldwide phenomenon. And all it is it's a box that enables you to play an interactive game on your TV. But on a cultural level, that's such a huge thing to do, because there were two things that achieved that changed the world, literally changed the world. One is it put computers in homes. At a time where IBM only had about 10,000 PCs sold altogether, Atari had millions of units installed, and every one of those was a computer in the home. The other thing it did was it created an interactive medium with television, which was always a passive medium. Before video games, people were just zombies sitting on the couch watching TV. But video games turned people into zombies jumping up and down on the couch yelling at the TV. And that was a very different experience. And I think that was huge in terms of taking people from a passive state to an active state. And we're still learning the implications of that.
The 5200 was a tragedy. The 5200 was a good idea gone horribly wrong.
The big problem that we had at Atari, the thing that killed the industry more than any other one thing, even more possibly than the E.T. video game, is that it was the first product life cycle. No one had ever been through a major success video game console life cycle. So where does it end? Nowadays, when somebody comes out with a new system, they already are designing the next system because they know the life of a system. They know a console is good for a certain number of years, and then it's going to die, it's going to fall off, and that's when we need to be ready and prepared to come in with the new system. Holy crap, you know, our first machine is finally falling off the cliff. We need something. We have something. We can take the 400, 800 computer, repackages the 5200, and spit it out, and we can do it.
So the 5200 was basically what the 400, 800 was going to be 3 years before. It's a tough business. Business is cruel. And you know, like I say, I'll say it again, it was the first time anything was being done. No one knew.
And what happened was the Atari 5200, it grew very large because marketing wanted perceived value, so bigger was better in some respects. And then marketing got really focused on the Intellivision, and Intellivisions had a bunch of buttons. They had a keypad, and they had this disc with 12 distinct regions. And so, hey, if we put an analog stick here, and one that doesn't self-center was the great idea, this will be a better marketing message than the Intellivision controller. And of course, it was a horrible experience. The company lost focus on what was important, and it was gameplay's important. You know, good games sell, bad games don't. If you've got a bad control mechanism, doesn't matter how good the graphics are. It's not going to be fun to play.
Now what do you do? So, and that was the thing. Engineering we really wanted to do something cool, right? We wanted to do like a real next generation because the 400, 800 was already last generation.
The engineering team and the creative team, the game designers, we were so upset, and we all felt that we were making a wrong decision with this controller, that we put together a petition to upper management, and we just explained that, you know, this is a great product. We put together a petition of the petitioners.
See, I wasn't someone who signed petitions so much as talked to people behind the scenes, because I always felt that was more like the way you operate in a corporation. And but I definitely put the word out whenever I could that, like, you know, this is something we either should have done a few years ago or, you know, can't really do now.
We told marketing, hey, we could make this 2600 compatible. They didn't want anything to do with that. They said they must be very separate and distinct. We can't have backwards compatibility, which at the time we thought might be a great feature. It's a good way to get people that have these Atari games already and keep them on the Atari platform instead of giving them an opportunity to jump to another platform. And so we designed the product specifically so that you could never have 2600 compatibility. About 2 months before launch, they demanded 2600 compatibility. And at that time, we had to build an adapter. And then we actually had to modify consoles that were already made, the first ones, to work with this adapter. And we called this thing the piggyback parasite. We were just horribly embarrassed by that situation. That never should have happened.
When you have a tragedy, and I do believe that the fall of the video game industry in the early 80s was a tragedy. It was a tragedy to many, many people. It changed a lot of lives.
I think it's pretty obvious when it comes to the video game crash that Atari didn't have control over the quality.
I mean, it needed some sort of way to keep just anybody from writing cartridges for it.
And so many people saw this video game gold rush, and they just, started dumping crap. I remember going into KB toy stores and just seeing, really bad box art and just really just terrible looking games. And that's when I started losing interest, and the market became flooded just with garbage. And it ultimately led to, of course, things like E.T. being, actually buried in the desert like garbage.
And what happened was that E.T. became the face of the crash of the video game industry, and I, of course, was the butt behind the face. That's kind of the way it went.
Greed and hubris, that's what undid Atari. If they just had worked more from a place of like focusing on making great games and delivering great games to the customer instead of like how can we maximize revenue, I feel like they'd still be a huge powerhouse today.
Frankly, Warner did not understand technology. They didn't understand the consumer marketplace, the video game, and Ray Kassar, I think was afraid of releasing new product because it might not be as successful as VCS. So that's a sure way to fail. And
I regret that we didn't have a new console by '84 that would have made it so that Atari continued to be a really viable business.
We never, ever got down to ever having any process by which we could come up with a better system.
Even to this day, I think people do believe that, like, if they just released like the 5200 earlier, or if they released the 7800, or they had done different things, they would could never have they would have survived the crash a lot better, and they would be like a powerhouse today. Like as a kid, I didn't know much about business, but I just felt like something was wrong.
No one knew anything. Certainly, no one knew how to replace an existing console with a new one.
The real one-liner about why the game industry crashed and went away is that it was a first product life cycle and nobody knew what to do.
There were so many things near the end of my early days with Atari that I wished, like everything we felt was underappreciated. Like I bought a Lynx, and I was trying to find people to play the Lynx with me, and everyone else had a Game Boy, and I was like, you guys, Todd's Slime World, let's do this, let's play Warbirds, come on.
And the Lynx was totally Sam's baby. He loved the notion of the hardware, and Sam, man, he loved the Lynx into the ground, right? Against all odds, he wanted to make it successful. We did the original one that was sort of the original design, and then he was like, no, we got to double down on it and do it and make it better.
Being in the Bay Area, you see these ads, come test video games. So I think I tried out at a few places. Electronic Arts comes to mind. Didn't get the job there, but was lucky enough to kind of get the QA job at Atari. Back in the day, I think it was a lot more fun. People playing 4 Lynx games and then having them all go out of sync and then having to track that down. Like, probably at the 1,000th time that happens, it does get a little old. But I think back in the day, you actually got a lot more input into the games. So a lot of the last Lynx games like Lemmings and some of the early Jaguar games like Cybermorph, the QA department actually got a lot of input into those games from a design perspective. You know what? I think the Lynx was great hardware. I like the fact that it was color. And I think the fact that you could have this like 4-way local multiplayer was great.
20-some years later, here I am buying a Lynx with a RGB output because people are still modding them, and selling them on eBay and stuff, right?
luck. Avoid the ground. Well done. Where did you learn to fly?
remember sitting in the room with Jack, and Jack saying to all of us, let's go back to our roots. Let's do at least one more game system.
The controller is quirky. The industrial design of both the CD and the main unit are quirky. And the fact that, like, I guess somebody used the tooling on the main unit to make some kind of dental device. Like, it just has like this weird, quirky history that I think is also inviting.
One of the most interesting things about the architecture of Jaguar was this notion of having the Motorola 68000, which basically was responsible for booting and housekeeping, and then the Tom and Jerry chips.
I mean, I think at the time, 68000 was still a strong processor, but obviously it was in the Genesis and other things, so you weren't really getting that true 64-bit experience. But I think there's games out there that took advantage.
There's so many features in Jaguar that for a developer like Jeff Minter that did 10+2000 for Jaguar was like, wow, give me this.
I would say, other than Cybermorph, it did not necessarily feel like that quantum leap that we were promised. It wasn't the flying cars, as they say, that we would have in the future, but you could see the potential, and that's what was really cool. You could see the parts of Cybermorph. You're like, oh, fully 3D world compared to something like maybe a Star Fox, which was on rails.
My perspective is the rule of thirds, where if you want to wind up with one really, really great game, you need to lay down 9 bets. Because out of those 9, 1/3 probably will ship. And out of those 3 games, one is going to be a hit, the other will be and the other probably might be a dinger. Yeah. You know, there just wasn't enough momentum behind the Jaguar at that time to be able to do that when Sega and Nintendo were basically already on their 3.5 generation of consoles, you know, at those times.
I mean, if Aliens vs. Predator came out as a launch title, maybe the history of the Atari Jaguar might have been slightly different. I think there are a lot more Jaguar fans today than there were when the system actually came out, and it's cool to see people enjoying the system some 20-odd years later. I believe everybody appreciated the innovative aspect, but on the other hand, the software was late, some of it was a little janky, but I think just saying, you know, time heals all wounds, to go onto the Jaguar forums now and look at the love for the system, honestly, like somebody that worked on it, I can't say that I completely understand it, but I totally appreciate it. I'm like, where were you guys like 20 or 30 years ago? You know, like you would have made my life like a heck of a lot better.